Your ability to keep on keeping on is going to be guided by the data and information that your environment and surroundings that you absorb and how you interpret that. And that interpretation plays a critical role because your brain doesn't understand the difference between reality and imagination. And I thought today we'd talk about this principle of keep on keeping on for two reasons. One, because we're coming to the end of the year. And at the end of the year, you kind of want to finish the year in the same way as you want to start the year. So you've got to accelerate, you've got to drive forward. And that's important. So it's important to also remember that it's difficult times, and the challenge of maintaining some level of momentum is something that a lot of people are experiencing. But just on that subject, I think what has been interesting for me is really understanding the functionality of this thing called the brain. I mean, this is really our hard drive, isn't it? It's where we store a lot of our data and our information, but I don't know if we spend enough time going into it and trying to understand truly how it works. Because once we've got some kind of understanding of how it works, we may be able to, in some ways, begin to navigate the path of utilizing the tools that are in it in order to give us the kind of life that we want to live. But more importantly, also enable us to keep on keeping on, which is, I think, essential for the end of this year and the start of a new year. The one thing that actually really took my interest about the brain is this thing about it not being able to distinguish between reality and imagination. Now, that for me has been something that stuck with me for a long time. If the brain's not really able to conceptualize the difference between reality and imagination, what does this mean for us? And this is true. I mean, if you think about sitting down and watching a movie that may be scary, or watching a movie that may even be exciting, or sitting down and thinking about things that may conjure up emotional reactions. I mean, I always joke about the fact that I know my wife is somebody who doesn't like spiders. So if I talk about spiders long enough, I can see a very physical and emotional reaction, even though the spiders are not there. So regardless of what we're watching, even though the fact that the reality is it's not true and it's not really happening, the brain doesn't know that. So therefore, our emotional reactions to whatever it is that we're experiencing become true. And that made me realize that this art of actually creating the very thing that you are imagining becomes a function of what it is that you're putting in your mind. It becomes a function of what is it that you're thinking about. And that then plays a critical role in your state of being and how you feel. So your state of being is a consequence of what you're thinking. A state of being is a consequence of what you have put in to be thinking about. And your state of being is a consequence of your experiences that you think about. So think about some of the events that have happened in your life some time back. And when you conjure them up, they almost feel like events that are happening immediately. If you have a sense of anger about something, you can almost reconjure up that anger. And if you have a sense of deep despair or sadness about something, you can really reconjure that up again. So what we then begin to start thinking about is what is it that we're putting in our minds? And more importantly, with our experiences, how are we experiencing the way we see things? Wayne Dyer once said, change the way you look at things and the things that you look at will change. Change the way you look at things. Now, changing the way you look at things has everything to do with how it is that you're seeing something and also how it is that you're interpreting that something. In other words, what are you putting in your mind? What are you creating? Create your own reality in terms of how you want to see things. If you want to see things negatively, then the reality of your experience will be negative. But if you want to see things positively, then the reality of your experience is going to be positive. And I think the most important element in terms of doing that is this thing of doing it with intentionality. Because I think a lot of the times when we live our life, I'm not sure we're intentional. It's almost accidental or it's automatic. I find that there are many occasions where I'm in autopilot. Think about moments when you are driving somewhere or walking somewhere and you get there and you think to yourself, how did I get here? I didn't even realize that I had gotten here. The other thing that I've recently, and I think it's a function of age, began to discover is this thing about taking medication, right? So you take the meds and then 2 minutes later you're thinking about, hang on, did I take my meds? And that's because when you were taking them, you were actually taking them, without being present, without being intentional, without being conscious of what it is that you're doing. So intentionality is going to play a critical role in enabling you to decide what is it that you're absorbing from an information point of view, right? What is it that you're thinking from a cognitive point of view? And rather than those things just conjure up themselves. And what is it that you're going to accept in order to be, for it to be part of who you are in your life? I mean, I know some people who say they don't watch TV because the television actually has an impact in terms of what it is that they're thinking or what it is that they're feeling. That's intentionality. It's making deliberate choices to guide yourself in terms of the kind of information and data that you have. That information and data, once you have whatever it is, it's also about intentionality in terms of how you use it. Is it going to be constructive or destructive? Because again, remember, how you actually internalize or visualize that data has everything to do with your state of being. And your state of being has everything to do with whether or not you're able to keep on keeping on, whether you're able to maintain momentum or even grow momentum. So it's almost a cyclical thing around ensuring that you begin to appreciate and understand that your ability to keep on keeping on is going to be guided by the data and information that your environment and surroundings that you absorb and how you interpret that. And that interpretation plays a critical role because your brain doesn't understand the difference between reality and imagination. And if you don't interpret those things in a manner that are positive to you, they're going to define your state of being in terms of what you're thinking and how you feel. And that when you look at certain things around you and how you interpret those things around you, then that's going to have an impact. So coming back to Wayne Dyer, when he says, change the way you look at things and the things you look at will change, it's really about the intentionality of saying that whenever I look at something, I'm going to give it the positive component of what it is that I want to feel, so that the impact in terms of my reality is not one that's negative. So that's Visualize with Vik, and that's what I want you to be thinking about as you progress, as you finish the year, as you head forward into the new year. And wishing you very positive movement forward into a new year that's going to be with us soon. Visualize with Vik. Click and like, subscribe, and please pass the word in terms of joining me on these discussions. Cheers.